technologists coming to the summit to get their insights on the future of supply chain 2030 and to understand what they're working on. So today I'm joined by Philip and Jan from OM Partners. Tell the group a little bit about yourself. What do you do at OMP?
Yes, my name is Philip Vervloesen. I'm a Senior VP at OMP Americas, responsible for business and company strategy, as well as business development both in North and expanding also Latin America.
Hi, Laura, and I'm Jan Snoeks, based at the headquarters of OMP in Belgium, and I'm Associate Director of Product Design.
Well, let's get into it. So what do you think supply chain 2030 looks like, guys? It's not that far away. I remember talking about 2020 and it's here on our doorsteps. What will 2030 look like?
Well, we could share a little bit material also on the 2030. What we think it would look like is based on how we got there, actually. If we look at a brief history, if we look at the past number of years, we went over a more silo-based MRP focus to enterprise planning, to advanced planning systems. And we believe that those silos in 2030 will be completely broken down, that it's really the network, the value network that will reign at corporations, where you focus on multi-tier type of ecosystems, where the network is really the center of gravity, and where you're looking at dependent streams over multiple continents, instead of looking at it more in a regional or silo-based way. I think that's one of the important dimensions of supply chain 2030, and providing there, of course, the ability to connect everyone and sync up everyone in that global network is very key there.
So how do we get started? What's your advice for people?
Well, one of the key advices is to really hold some of the key principles of supply chain excellence. That network as a center of gravity is one of them, to really not look at individual sites or at small clusters, but really go a level higher and see the dynamics. If, for example, certain global events happen, to directly see the impact of those events on your global supply chain, on the financial streams, on your R&D and so forth, that is very important. That's one key principle to be prepared for. The other one is very key as well. It's your human capital. We know that human capital is scarce and that we need to be prepared to hire the right talent for these type of functions as well, because you're using different type of analytics to support that as well, right? And as OMP, we can give also the right level of advice on what talent you need to, our companies need to, our customers need to acquire to excel in supply chain planning, financial planning, and beyond of that. That's the second key principle. Third one is the data mining and data availability and access is, even more important than ever to have access to, but also harmonize that data to be able to use it to create and have these digital twins to assess. And in that, of course, you have the machine learning and AI that can also perform more of the data sensing to increase the accuracy of your data as well. That's an important principle. And the last one is different aspects and different dimensions of Industry 4.0, whether it is IoT, connecting through devices your right level of data and cleanse and harmonize it, whether it's about all levels, both supply and demand sensing, whether it's using the right analytics to assess and to immediately report out to the right levels. And all that can enable then the key KPIs, like you see there in the middle, like the growth and build of customer service, the optimization of your utilization of assets, and your shareholders' value and cost of inventory, for example.
Well, how do you guys help? Let's tell me the OMP story. What should people talk to you about at the summit? How do you help?
Well, there's different dimensions to the OMP story. One is the planning platforms that we would provide to make that story happen. It's smart planning platforms, which means that we want to make sure that we have a good balance between the touchless or more robotized planning on the one hand, and the human intervention on the other hand. That requires also smart collaboration to involve not only your core stakeholders, but also the beyond the enterprise stakeholders to connect to the solution, to contribute and show and show their commitments and really have a very closed loop there. And the last aspect is industry focus, not only from a solution point of view, but also from a human point of view to comply the right expertise or complement the right expertise to the solution, which is also industry oriented. And in that sense, these platforms are providing the right level of information, the right level of analytics, the right value to these persona that we serve for. You have your business lead who wants to know, for example, where do we need to increase or cut capacity? We have the innovation leader who wants to make sure that we invest in the right roadmap topics to stay on edge. You have the supply chain planner who wants to make sure to be happy, to be trained, to adopt the solution very quickly. You have the technology leader who, of course, wants to standardize the different functions in the platforms and connect to a system of record. And then you have the financial lead who is interested in the top line value and see how the solution implementation, steady state can really affect and improve the bottom line and top line value. Now, one of the key points that we mentioned is the industry solution, the one model, one base, and the ease of access. And maybe I'll take a few minutes to explain how we layer that industry solution, because that's quite key differentiator in the software and also in the services that we and the expertise that we provide. So in the base layer, you have that common model. You have the one base that anyone, any kind of role can connect to. We then work with what we call industry flavors that allow to, depending of the group of industries, whether that is chemicals or life science or metals, to be able to have the right flavor and depth, whether you're talking about shelf life, about shelf life, about, let's say, regulatory constraints, where you talk about cutting optimization in the metals or the paper, that you have those type of modeling parameters already ready out of the box to be able to work with. That also typically reduces the amount of configuration that needs to be done on the project layer. You can really talk then more about finding the right fine-tuning of analytics that are speaking really to the language of the different type of users and persona that need to have report outs from the solution. And because it's all cloud-based, that even reduces the customer layer, what needs to happen after go live, even more, because you really are focused on what you already deliver out of the box. And that's really our motto there. It's delivering the industry solutions that fit your needs, where we take it standard where possible and tailored where needed. Now, we mentioned earlier we have different roles, and that's very key in the supply chain 2030, that you not just have your core planner and management roles, you have really a multitude of roles that need to have instant access to the solution, whether it is on the collaborative side, on the reporting side, visibility, top-level management, whoever needs to contribute to your total cycle. We can fine-tune that a little bit. On the collaborative side, it's not only on the sales side, but also on suppliers, for example, or suppliers of suppliers, really with those interconnected networks that need to provide their commitments and see immediately how that impacts your global supply chain, really syncing that up. You have your core planning users, whether it is an SNOP, IBP user, or a value stream planner, a deployment planner, detailed scheduler. All of the users need to sync up also together there and have their part of the data and functionality that is required. And then lastly, you have your finance, you have the R&D, supply chain leaders, mobile users that need the right level of cockpits and dashboards there as well.
Now, to illustrate this through some really nice visual on one of the key angles of these robotized planning platforms. We like to show it based on what we call the autopilot. Now in this visual, we present business reality. It's a very large network that goes across multiple tiers, goes across multiple regions, and we will show how the autopilot, which is a solver, can react instantaneously on events in a smart way, not simply by responding on every individual change, but by reacting event-based with holistic optimization methods. Because if you look at the reality of this kind of networks, that is that change is continuously happening across the network at various levels. And solving every individual event is not an option because of the interconnectivity. And that's why it's needed to continuously monitor all these events, identify the ones that really matter, because not all of them are that relevant and generate noise that you don't want to have an impact on your planning, and then prioritize them in a logical sequence. And that is what the autopilot is doing on a continuous ongoing basis in 2030. So we will take the most critical event of that moment. In this case, it's an unexpected demand in the EMEA region. Then the autopilot will evaluate all possible options. In this case, it's possible to source from a US distribution center or tap EMEA distribution network. And important to notice that this evaluation is not done only against that demand, but really is considering the full demand situation at that moment in time. And then the autopilot picks the best option and automatically updates the plan. Now, depending on the financial impact factor, this decision can be managed via a planner workflow or can be automatically be accepted. Now, demand is not the only trigger for change. Also, supply can be pretty disruptive as well. And so in this next example, we show a delivery problem of a supplier generating a short-term schedule issue, potentially in 1 or 2 production sites. Now, the autopilot will also in this case generate and analyze the scope of the impacts throughout the full network and evaluate options. And here you see that in fact you have 3 options that come to play. And again, he will look at the financial impact of each individual option. Depending on the level of impact, he will automate and generate a plan proposal. And again, the workflow will kick in to have a planner take an additional step or not. And in this case, it will be a rerouting of some supply to one dedicated plant, where the other plant will then also adapt automatically its schedule for the next day or days. Now, if you look at these scenarios, you quickly realize that also in the supply chain of the future, collaboration between the different planning functions is key. And that's why all decision levels from scheduling up to tactical and strategic planning, and all supply chain verticals simply need to be integrated in one single solution to make that dream come true. And that's why supply chain leaders, to be prepared for 2030, need to make the right investment now to migrate or move to that kind of philosophy, because it's not a one-day journey.
Well, thanks for sharing. I look forward to seeing you at the summit and having people ask you about this smart planning or autonomous planning. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you too, Laura.
Thank you.
Okay, bye now.